Okay, I am Martti Pietilä, and I welcome you to the Virtual Racing School webinar. In this webinar, we'll go through basically the introduction of the new car setups feature in the VRS, data packs, and then we are going to do a couple of driver data analysis just for an example of what you guys can look from the data and how you can use the data packs that are provided by the coaches to your advantage. I'm just going to quickly go through what the VRS overall is, in case you're not familiar with the software. It's in short, it's a telemetry logger that will log all your driving data. The same thing that as Motec or Atlas or whatever program you prefer to use, but this is web-based, and you can share your data very easily. You can see the data of other drivers, mainly the coaches from VRS fairly, easily. And you can also book coaching lessons from the coaches that VRS has. Me and a couple of other teammates of mine, we're all fairly experienced sim racers. Some of us have even real life experience, and we usually have some things to tell you from your driving on how to improve. But more on that later. We'll first just get started with the program. And this is basically the first page that you will see once you enter the VRS, and you can see your data, your tracks, cars, lap amounts, and whatnot, which is quite handy. But what we'll first show you is the new feature in the driving analyzer, which is the setup comparison tool, which is actually quite a nice feature and something that I personally have been looking forward for quite a long time. Or I've been doing it for quite a long time, but on just with a pen and paper, and then I've lost all my notes, and there goes the data. But in this in VRS, you can now, it will actually store the setup data that you have. It will, as far as I'm aware, it will at least in some point, if not already, upload your setups and save your setup. So whenever you make a change in your setup, it'll be logged, and you can check them later on. And it's very handy to compare where the differences in the setup or driving then come from. We're just first going to look at the latest, actually my data pack for the Formula Renault 2.0 for branch hats. And I'm just quickly going to pick a couple of laps here. Just start the data with my first timed lap, basically. And I already know that on lap 18 I had made some setup changes, which you're able to see here. Now this is quite handy. You can immediately say that I made a small front camber change. The other values are, they have changed in the car, but not necessarily something that that are intentional at times. For example, the push rod length is just a way to restore the ride height to the same value that it was before the adjustment. Whenever you make an adjustment to the chassis of the car, you will want to restore the other options in the car so that the ride heights match and everything else kind of stays as static as possible without any kind of unintentional changes. Now here's a first mistake that you guys probably noticed, that I made a second change with the diff already. You shouldn't do two changes at once, but yeah, I gave myself that freedom with this one. But yeah, this is a really handy feature. You can see all the features, which will list all the values and options that you have on the setup screen. Um, so basically, you have the whole setup stored here, or just choose the deltas, which is a bit more easier on the eye than to check the whole data. And I had made another adjustment, and basically here the fuel is a bit different. Differences like that don't matter really. Um, the anti-roll bar is basically the only one. No, and then there was another adjustment at the same time with the diff going even softer. But yeah, this is a really nice way to keep track of um, of your setup progress, and also in if you're something like I am, and you tend to lose your track of your setup changes, and then you know that you did this amazing lap with this one setup, but you did forget to save it, and now it's gone forever. But with VRS enabled, you will have it logged. We also had a couple of questions asked beforehand, but if anything comes up that you want to know, just ask away. You should be able to use the Google Plus interface at least to post questions here, and if not, then try to reach Peter and he will send me those questions. Um, the first one was I'm just gonna go through the setup options first, or setup related first. It was about the ride heights. There was a question of how to measure the ride height, or what the ride heights are actually measuring in the car, and where to look at them, and where to um where to try to set them to. Um, Basically, the names of the ride height channels are fairly self-explaining. Left corner, left front, right rear, left rear. The exact positions of the car, of the sensors, are unfortunately not available for us, but usually they should be somewhere along the axles of the car. Um, the CF and CR values that are available on some cars are actually the splitter ride height, and those are very useful for determining where the chassis is at certain phase of uh, each track or each corner, and you can either use the the splitter ride heights, or then you can just calculate on your own. Just divide the, for example, the front left and front right ride height by add them together and then divide them, and you will have the average ride height of the, in this case, the front, which will be something that you will likely want to use to determine the actual position of the car. And the way to find out what are the best ride heights is basically just the clock. Um, you usually want the front to be as low as possible without scraping the track too much. Um, whenever you put weight on the against the tarmac with the car chassis, you're removing weight from the tires, so that's something that you don't want to do. And besides, it'll upset the suspension and do every other sort of weird stuff, so you want to avoid that. And so when you set the front to the lowest value, depending of course on the other suspension settings of the car. For example, the skip barber, you're changing the front cambers and many other values when you're increasing or decreasing the front ride height. So you'll just need to find out what's working for them, for working for you with those types of cars. But for more sophisticated cars where you can readjust cambers and other parts of the suspension, you will just want to go as low as you can. And here you actually can see the ride heights of the car. In this case, the center ride height. Yeah, there you have the front ride heights. So you can see that in the turn number 1, it appears that the car is bottoming out on the exit of turn 1, probably when I'm going over the exit curb. Otherwise, it's fairly decent apart from the second to last turn. Again, uh, probably quite heavy use of curbing, so that's not necessarily something that you might you could just disregard the behavior like that unless you have a problem with the car, if it's going somewhere where you don't want it to go. With the rear, basically for each car there's a different value where you want to reach. um, it depends a lot what the car is like. uh, a slow car like the skip bar, but where you're not even able to adjust the rear ride height with the skip. But let's use the Formula Renault as an example. When you're on the slower parts of the track, or even the fast ones, because the aerodynamic effect is not that strong with this car. It has plenty of aero, but it's not like the HPD, for example, or the McLaren F1. Um, but you would basically want to check out where the rear ride height is. You can see that it's by just a glance here that it's somewhere around 25 millimeters during pretty much every phase on the track. There are some variables where the left side and right side are at different heights, but you can already just estimate that the mean level of the car, even in this turn number 3, will be around 25 millimeters. So how you will set up the rear ride height is that you just do a number of runs when you're able to do consistent lap times. You will just see and feel what is the best for you in the current setup. Usually higher rear ride height will increase oversteer at pretty much every single corner. But it might give you better overall grip, or better other characteristics. For example, at road at Atlanta with the Formula Renault, the exit after the roller coaster or snake or whatever it is called, the left-hander, you have a very bumpy exit over the curb. In that place, just a couple of millimeters more rear ride height helped the car to stay off the track, and I was able to use the exit curbing a bit more aggressively and gain a bit of time by doing that. But yeah, unfortunately there's no um, shortcut to any major gains before you have found the values that work for you. But once you do have those values, then it it should be a bit easier to dial in the track specific things in each car that you drive. But the work that you need to do before that is quite lengthy. If you take the analytical route and measure the what the car is doing at each phase, well, not necessarily each phase of the corner, but try to um, consider what is the average height of the chassis in each corner. And which brings us to the next question about setups, which was if basically what point in a driver's career it is worthwhile for the driver to start actually building the setup. Now, this depends on so many factors. Basically, with the skip barber, um, you might have already noticed that we've had basically, or the data packs that I've provided have had exactly the same setup throughout the whole season, because that car just doesn't require any setup changes. It's once it's somewhere there where you feel comfortable with it, which is basically the whole setup range because they're so minimal, then there isn't much to do with that car. The tire pressures are roughly there, the balance is roughly there. Uh, I think the anti-roll bar and the front ride height setting basically. Um, that's only like two factors that you can put into the setup. So unless you're fighting from the last hundreds of a second, I wouldn't really spend that much time with the setup, especially with a car like Skip Barber. For sure, there are things to test out, different tire pressures, if something else would work better or not. But the key point is that the lap times that you put in before you start to tweak the setup should be really, really consistent. And by this, I mean with the Skip Barber kind of car, maybe even uh, less than 2/10 of a second difference between normal lap times. And even when you have the 2/10 difference, you basically, as a driver, should be able to point out that where that 2/10 difference came from on each lap. So that's the kind of consistency that you will need to actually reliably build setups. Now, I don't say that there aren't people that aren't able to produce quality setups without driving that consistently. There are people like that, and they can do that. They can improve their lap times, but personally, I have no idea how they do that because in order to get anything out of your testing or setup development, those differences should be you should be able to pinpoint the differences where they come from, and then figure out what the car actually did in order to uh, analyze what if the setup actually was an improvement or if it was just your own driving. Now, with a car like the Formula Renault, um, which is a bit faster, a bit more complex car, but still there's it doesn't have any too difficult setup options. Mainly, what you want to focus on after you're able to do fairly consistent lap times. I'm not saying necessarily down to 2/10 of a second, but let's just say a half a second difference between lap times early on in the week when you're kind of getting familiar with the track and everything. Then just at some point try to figure out the correct aerodynamic uh, uh, downforce from the car that you will want for any particular track. This one, Brand Hatch, was pretty easy. You have fast corners, uh, quite short straights, and basically only one really slow turn. So maximum downforce with the right balance that fits you the best. It's pretty easy way to go. But tracks like Suzuka, where you have a sector which is basically fast turns all the time, and then another sector where you are just flat out near the rev limiter on the seventh gear, you really need to think about what you want to do with the car. Obviously, if you put too much aero on the car, then people will just fly by you on the straights. Same with tracks like Road Atlanta. But the basic idea is that you, with any type of car, you will first need that consistency before you need to tweak that setup. And the best way to get consistency is just to drive as many laps, analyze your laps, check out the data that you have here, and check out where those mistakes came from. We just got a question from Frank. Just a second, and I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah, so let's get to the data packs, what they are, and how they work. Basically, from the live coach, you see the different plans that are available. There's my plans, obviously, and then there's a couple of my teammates on the GT3 cars, MX5, even the McLaren. And you can just access these by show in analyzer, and it'll pop up there. Just give it a second to load. And yeah, Frank, you asked what happened to the map feature, and you can still enable it from the account setting. And it was removed, or rather disabled, because the maps weren't always accurate, and where they were a bit off at times, and for some users they were loading quite slowly. So that's the reason they're disabled. But you can get them back in if you want to. Yeah, there's the option for enabling the map. Anyways, let's get back to the data packs. I'm just gonna show Dave's laps here just for reference, so you basically know how to check the laps. And this is pretty good tool right here, where you can choose either perfect lap, optimal lap, fastest lap, average, or average fast lap. It really depends on your own consistency and how comfortable you are with the car. But just looking at Dave's couple of laps here, you can see that he's fairly consistent. So in this case, I would probably start to just check out his fastest lap against something else, see if there's anything major in the driving style. And yeah, you can see in this time delta bar, you can see pretty dramatic changes, while actually this is just really just over 1/10 of a second difference in the turn-in to Ascari. But we'll get back to the delta bar and other options first. I'm just going to load some data from myself from the branch hatch again, and we had some Gonzalo was kind enough to provide us with his own data from Brands Hatch. I think he drove the laps today as well with the same setup as I did, so I can basically give you a short glimpse of what the driver analysis is, what are the things that you want to look at, and how to improve your own driving with this said. So I'm just gonna pick my fastest lap. This is fairly easy selection from me because I just did the data pack a couple of hours ago, and I pretty much remember how this lap went. It didn't have any major offs, so it's easy to compare uh, my data between Gonzalo's and where we might find gains from him. Just use his fastest laps first as well, and wait for them. Give it a moment for the data to load. Now you can first of all see that um, the setup that Gonzalo was using was the same that I used, which is available in the data pack section as well, and no other changes. Only thing that is different is the fuel. And the first thing that I tried to look at, or rather I will look at, is the time delta, which is showing you how much are the laps going to be different from each other. For example, here on the main straight, the difference is minimal. There's obviously on the straight, there's not going to happen much. But for example, here, the second to last turn, the left-hander, you can actually see quite a large increase in the delta time on the basically starting from the braking point all the way to the next braking point. You can see that the Gonzalo is losing quite a large amount of time in this single phase of the racetrack here, and you can also see it in the speed trace. And there was actually a question about the delta and speed traces, what I'm looking at and how I'm trying to interpret the data. I basically just described my own process for how to understand what's happening on the data, and the easiest way is these two graphs. On the first one, you can with the one glimpse see if there is any major flaws in the data. I mean, if there's a mistake or maybe a habitual mistake from the driver, uh, basically you don't need to concentrate on the small dips and bumps, as you can see here. It doesn't matter that much if on the entry phase a driver is losing time, but then on the exit phase again gaining time as the graph is going downwards. But and especially if the graph is staying somewhat consistent or rather constant as it is in this example all the way to the second to last turn where it kind of makes this large jump. And the second thing that you will want to look at is the speed trace when you first notice that there is something worth investigating, because basically what this delta part shows us is that in any corner, Gonzalo is losing basically, I would say, about a tenth against me. So if he's losing 5/10 or 4/10 in one single corner, it's not necessarily that um, it's not that there's something in his driving skills that's kind of permitting him from being just as fast as than I am in the other corners, but rather that there is some sort of mistake or some sort of behavior which could be easily fixed, because I mean the second to last turn is not that different from any other turns, and I can basically say that okay, we'll figure out what this mistake is, and you will have a 3/10 improvement in your lap time right away. Now I haven't analyzed all these laps to see if this behavior changes, but the point is that at this point I would make a mental note of the mistake and see if it comes up on any other laps and why it is happening. Just check another lap. 22.1 is a decent lap. There's 4/10th difference. We'll just see how the delta part changes with the different lap. Okay, the opening turns, basically the first sector of the track, there's a bit more difference, but I would still say that the second to last turn has some room for improvement. And here you can start to see, or rather investigate from the speed trace, that what is actually going on. And it's already from this this distance, it's fairly easy to see that okay, the braking point is roughly the same area, but for whatever reason the other lap is the apex speed is quite a lot slower than mine, and also the apex is happening speed-wise a lot earlier than what I'm going. So I'm just trying to find the correct sector to investigate the issue a bit closer. Okay, I went a bit too far. Okay, now here you can see that on this lap and on this corner, this was actually Gonzalo's worst corner against my lap. He lost 3.5 tenths here. And what you want to study is obviously the delta trace, speed trace, steering input, what's going on with your hands, brake, and throttle. And that's really all that you... Oh, and of course the driving line. So those are the best tools for the job to figure out what inputs are causing the time change, and how to fix it then. So from the speed trace, you can see that he is slowing down a bit more than I am. Actually, he's slowing down better than I am, so he's pushing the brake more. Oops. Okay. Where did my... traces go? Okay, here we got it. From the speed trace, you can see that he, while he starts to turn into the corner at the same time as I am, he's turning in slightly sharper. And from the apex speeds, you can also notice that his corner minimum speed, or the apex speed, is roughly 25 meters or even 30 meters earlier than mine is. You can see his position there, and my apex speed is actually already on the exit phase of the corner. We get to 100% throttle almost about the same time, but what matters is that I was able to carry more speed through the corner than he was. And in this case, the only change that I would try to do is a bit more gentle braking, or even brake as hard as, oops, again, brake as hard as Gonzalo is doing now, but for a shorter amount of time. The only big mistake that there, or it's not even a big mistake, but a mistake that is happening here is that the entry speed to the corner is not quite there. You in this corner, because of the camber that the road has, you will just you're able and you will um, want to enter the corner at very high speed, because the camber will keep you in the corner, and you don't need that kind of late apex as you would if the corner would be as flat as pretty much any other corner on the track. Okay, I'm going to go to another data pack by Frank, and this is from Zandvoort, where the skip barbers are this week. And again, since I did the data packs today, I'm just gonna use my fastest lap as a reference, since I know that the lap went decently well and I didn't have any major offs there, so it's a fairly good uh, good point to reference. Overall, you really don't want to compare data from bad laps, um, because there's not really a point to check out the data from a lap that you've done a mistake in, that you already know that it isn't a lap that is presenting what you are capable of doing. Nor you should try to achieve a stellar qualifying lap in order to just to compare data, but you should just drive consistently and get nice good laps in without any major mistakes. When you're able to do that, then it's a lot easier for yourself, and in case you want to be coached by one of the VRS coaches, it is easier for us to pinpoint some habitual mistakes, uh, that you might have there. Um, Frank, there's nothing to be embarrassed of. I mean, this. I'm sure this data will make you even better driver and get you and everyone else enjoying the sorry, enjoying the driving even more. But anyways, we'll just get a few laps here and see a couple of things to look at. I'm just gonna pick the fastest lap here. The laps are a bit inconsistent early on, but I mean the good ones, 0.6, 0.5, 0.8, that, that's close enough already. I mean the average fast lap is pretty close to the fastest lap, which is already showing you that while you're able to be while you're able to put it together, it's what the current pace is, and raw pace is always um, a different thing than consistency. When you start to do consistent laps, it's easier to improve than it is to improve when you're able to put a stellar lap and then miss it by a mile on the next attempt. Anyways, let's just study the data and see where it leads us. Ken gave us a question about the oval cars. Now I have to admit that I'm not the best on oval cars, but the question is about having trouble sealing the splitter to the ground for speed. How would I go about finding my splitter right height and go about seeing how close I'm to the ground? Now, I'm not entirely sure how which outputs do the NASCARs give, but if it does give you the CF right height value, then that is the one that you would want to be looking at and have that minimized until you're scraping the ground. Find the value where it is, maybe even use a datum. I'm not actually sure if the VRS is showing today. Anyways, make at least a note of when the car is scraping and when you can hear it hitting the tarmac, and then find out the right height values from the telemetry, and then adjust the springs and right heights correspondingly to reach the minimum right height um, throughout the whole track. But like I said, the only ovals that I've done are street stocks, so I'm the wrong guy to answer that. But the basic principle of the right height adjustment should be the same on the road and oval, as far as I'm aware. Of course, on the oval you have, when you have camber on the road, um, you will need kind of a stiffer front end to keep the car from bottoming out on the corners. But I guess that's. But the center front, or then you should have the front right and front left values, and check out the data um, from here, front right heights, and you can visualize pretty easily. I mean, the other one's left and uh, the lighter one is right, so you can just pretty much visualize that even in the corner, the right height will be around, I would say 50, 60 millimeters in this case. 53 to be exact, apparently. Hopefully that answers your question. Sorry that I couldn't come up with any better ones because, like I said, I'm not that much of an oval driver. Anyways, back to the data pack. Again, we'll just first check out the full lap to see the delta difference, because that will show us the pinpoint us to the area that has the oh, I was on the wrong page. Okay, there you have it. So basically what this bar here is showing, that there aren't any major flaws in there. The time is like constantly like increasing. If there's a point maybe here that you can see a kind of a slightly higher angle on the delta bar, and which is actually one of the most difficult sections on the track. Um, the delta is 3.6, and to the next braking area it's 4.4, so 0.8 of a second in the two corners. So we might just kind of look at that, what's going on in that phase. We'll just get the speed trace up. There you can actually already see that while the apex speed is actually higher with Frank than I have. But something is happening on the exit phase of the corner that he's not able to accelerate as fast as I am. I'm gonna zoom in so we can see better what's actually happening here. and get the steering and brake values, because these are pretty much the ones that you can or you should use to investigate the data. You really don't need to go to any other parameters before you kind of get the idea of the driving, and you're able to do consistent lap times, and you're actually at the point that you're able to feel the differences in the car, that what makes it better, what is how you want the car to behave. Overall, I'm just going to get quickly back to the setup issue that we spoke about earlier, and I have yet to see or find a real magic setup that will make the car faster. Most of the time it is about just getting the car to work for you. Get a car that's actually it does exactly what you want. Some drivers, like me, compared to my own teammates, um, I want more bite on the front end of the car on the entry phase, and maybe some understeer on the exit. But usually my teammates will complain about my two oversteering setups and telling that they're not drivable. But that's, I mean, one setup works for one and not for the other. Anyways, looking at this corner here, usually it's these kind of dips in the middle of a corner or a corner section where you have kind of multiple corners tied together that show that there is at some point a little bit too much speed carried through the corner, and the car doesn't really want to turn in well, which is evident here in the graph. The speed difference is not particularly great. It's only just below 7 kilometers per hour, which is not that bad. But what it does in this point is that while I'm actually dapping the brakes on the entry to the left side turn, just to get the car front a bit of the weight of the car to the front tires, in order to get it to turn a bit better. Maybe induce some oversteer on the car, not much, but just to get that extra bite there. And that short dap on the brakes actually slow down me from 97 kilometers per hour to 86. So 5 kilometer. Was it 5? A bit more. Anyways, it slows me down, and I keep coasting even after I release the brakes for a short amount of time, just maybe 10-15 meters. But this is all there to allow the car to turn. Even while I'm on second gear, the car actually, because of the small dap on the brakes, the car has still a more kind of momentum to pivot around itself due to the weight being shifted on the front tires. So I get the nose pointed out of the turn earlier, and I'm then able to go to full throttle. And here is the difference, or rather, here comes the big difference in the sector time. While Frank at this point is still exactly the same speed as I am, I'm already on full throttle. He's near full throttle, but still not quite there. So maybe just remove a bit from the entry speed of the corner, and then work on getting back to the throttle 100%. Because especially the Skip Barber is a type of car that the engine is so weak that you basically want to be on full throttle or no throttle. Everything in between doesn't make that much of a difference. Sure, you can see some some manipulation of the throttle from me as well here and there, but basically it's most of the inputs are 0 or 100%. Actually, in the steering trace here, you can see that on my throttle implication, I likely had a bit of an oversteering moment. And that is probably due to my small brake input here. Remember, the weights are on the front. And even though the skip harbor tends to understeer when you hit the throttle, but possibly this little move made the car to pivot around so much that I actually went into oversteer while I was exiting the corner. Well, it seems that Frank actually was suffering from the opposite problem. Usually when you have a steering trace like this, that it's kind of increasing towards the end of the corner, like on the both the right hand and the left side corner, it's indicating that for whatever reason there is understeer on the car. The driver is trying to turn the wheel more and more and more, and eventually getting to a point where the car might finally bite, and then you need to quite quickly um, turn the steering wheel back straight, or in this case, even put some opposite lock, because when the front bites, you have kind of your full throttle trying to turn the car. It doesn't turn, and then it turns with all its might, and it'll end up in uh, small amount of oversteer. In more agile cars like the Formula Renault, especially the F1 cars, um, you might really mistake this kind of um, um, behavior with a car that is way too oversteery, because you're kind of safe in the middle of the corner, and then when you get to the exit phase and start unwinding your steering wheel, the front bites and you lose the rear. It's not so evident with the skip barber, uh, but it is definitely something that you should be looking at. I'm just quickly going to see if there are any other things here in this lab. Sector 6 is showing 0.8 of a difference. This section is actually really tricky to get right, because the track is so wide and you have so many different driving lines. But I'm just trying to quickly get an idea of what is happening here. Again, here you can see me use the throttle a bit more softly. It's just not 0 or 100%. I'm probably, yes, I'm also doing a bit of opposite lock there. This is one of the maybe the rare corners where you can actually put the car a bit sideways to control what it is doing. But the optimum would, of course, always be to kind of not get the car sliding and keep it on the rails and not do any extra movements. But what's quite evident here is that you can already see from this driving line that Frank could maybe drift the car a bit more for left on the exit of the first turn, and also he's turning a bit too late into the second turn, a bit too late and a bit too little. So in this case, I would imagine that it's only the driving line that is making the biggest differences. We're just quickly going to check how that looks with the track map, since it was asked about earlier in the session. Okay, I need to select the laps again. Okay, now we have the map there. And yeah, here you can see that the the driving lines are a bit different. We turn in at about the same point. I might be a bit more to the left on the initial turn in. The line through the actual corner is pretty similar, but I would say that there's a couple of car widths on the left, kind of more room for Frank to carry even more speed through the corner and therefore gain a bit of time. In this one, um, the mistake is that the Frank either went a bit wide, or I'm not entirely sure because I haven't had the proper amount to analyze all the possible data here available today. But it's either a single time mistake, or if it's a habitual mistake, then the line is a bit too the turn into the corner is a bit too smooth, and there's a bit too much room on the right side of the track close to the apex, and that forbids the driver from getting to the throttle as early as would be desirable. Also, might be worth using just a second gear through this corner section. You hardly ever need to go to first gear. I don't think I went to first gear at Sanford at any of the turns. But yeah, this is basically a short introduction to data analysis. This is the stuff that we look at in the data and compare. Obviously, because in this session I took only a little time comparing each driver. I couldn't get that much into detail of particular corners or particular driver behavior that is there to kind of possibly fix or improve, or even for me to copy that sort of behavior. But in a normal coaching session, it would obviously be different. I would uh, have more time, and obviously the input that I could give from the data would be a lot more detailed. But this is the main principle. What you guys should be looking at from your own data, and hopefully it would interest you so much that you'd actually book a coaching lesson from one of our coaches and learn from them. Um, because at least for me, it is very useful to compare my data between the teammates that I have, and getting that couple of tenths of difference by just being able to visualize what the other guy is doing better in some other corners is sometimes very crucial in determining if it's P20 or P10 in the races. But yeah, thank you for attending the webinar. This was a first one for me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and actually I was able to give you some input on what VRS is, what the data packs, what the analysis, and what kind of coaching services we have. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.